the reason why China will this time not engage in fiscal stimulus like in 2008, in a massive fiscal stimulus, is because, yes, on one hand, debt levels have gone up. On the other hand, China has further developed. So it needs, there is decreasing returns on investment, meaning that, bridges, railroads, ports are not as needed as they were, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. And therefore, it makes less sense to stimulate the economy through the traditional infrastructure investment programs. There may be, however, very targeted types of investments in, for instance, chip manufacturing or clean energy that may make sense and may be part of the fiscal stimulus packages. But overall, times have changed, and rather than fiscal stimulus, what we think China will do is, or has to do, is structural reform. The package of structural reforms needs to have different pillars. The first one would be to encourage domestic consumption. So shift from investment to consumption, and let the consumer decide where companies should invest by providing demand. So this is always a joke up the sleeve of Chinese policymakers, because consumption is relatively low compared to other countries. So this is a possibility, but this, of course, requires consumer confidence. Another very important transition that needs to be done is the shift from manufacturing to services, especially high-quality services are important, or high-end services, and that may require some sort of incentives, like, for instance, tax incentives for services companies. And another very important aspect is, having reduced poverty quite successful in China over the last years. Now the areas, the non-coastal areas, not the areas that have driven economic growth over the last 30 years, but those areas need to come up with their own development programs. Then actually, some of the good news that we have seen this year is that it is probably the case that the northern or the central regions of China have been growing faster than the coastal regions, which would be a good sign. And another very important aspect is that some industries that are not engaged in sustainable value creation, like real estate, should probably be de-emphasized. Right? China needs to move from made in China to innovated in China. We think that in the next 2 to 3 months, there will be some announcement in terms of structural reform. The elite system has probably not reached consensus yet on how this reform should look like, and what the emphasis should be. This will take some time still, but there is not that much time left. So the sooner these announcements are made, the better. And it's basically creating incentives for the value creating industries. We hope that in 2 to 3 months we will see something. It's the story in low inflation in China of a very professional central bank that doesn't want to make its citizens poorer. And sort of saw what was coming as a result of COVID and excessive fiscal stimulus or excessively loose monetary policy in the West. So basically, China is benefiting from very smart and responsible both monetary and fiscal policies over the last 3-4 years. Now, another reason, of course, for low inflation is the fact that the economy is not growing as fast as it could, right? And this you can see with the PPI, right? The producer price index at minus 5.5%, and even the CPI, the consumer price index, at close to zero. Maybe it's even a little bit underwater. So that points to a weak economy, but it also points to an ultra competitive market where there's many companies competing with each other. So they're getting, the pie shrinking, they're exporting less, maybe they're, abroad, but domestically things are not substituting for the weakness in international demand. And then they have to become more efficient, reduce prices. Some will not survive, but actually deflation can also be the result of an ultra-competitive climate, with people competing for customers by lowering prices. China cannot work, decoupled from the West. There is a process of decoupling, but this process, from the Chinese perspective, is deemed as not good for its own economic growth. No nation has been able to grow by being outside the international system. So I think China, whether it's a charm offensive for foreign investment or new free trade agreements or joining maybe CP, TPP, and other global institutional arrangements, liberalizing their economy for foreign investment, that China realizes this. So on China's side, there will be also the same awareness. And I think the awareness in the West and in China that we depend on each other. And that's a little bit what Elon Musk said recently in an interview. We are conjoined twins. That this awareness will then eventually bring us together. There will be rivalry. There will be competition, geopolitical competition. But I think it will be managed in a smart way, and there will be hopefully will achieve a balance of power that does not compromise global economic growth, and that still keeps the doors of trade and investment open on both sides. I think this is the best future for humanity. There's other scenarios, and if they come to pass, we will not be happy.